Hi guys, and welcome back to the Moaning Yorkshireman. Welcome back to part number 2 of answering your questions. That's right, for about the 3rd consecutive year, we've had to go into 2 parts once again. I've answered all the questions in one go, but I've had to split the video in half because there's just far too many questions from far too many people to be all rounded up into one question and answers. So again, a massive thank you to everyone that asked the questions and for getting involved as always. I hope the answers I give are as truthful and as honest as I always try to make them be, and I hope some of them make you laugh as well, because there's been some good and funny questions. If you scroll across the bottom of your screen right now, there is a timestamp. That's right, the video is timestamped based on when and whose questions I answer. So if you can't see your name in this one, that means you're in part number 1, you lucky buggers. So head back to Tuesday's video, which will be in the Beyond the Moan playlist, and I'll put it in the description down below as well, a link there, so you can find it easily, so you can see your questions answered if you have not already done so. And if you're just here to tune in and see what everyone else has asked and how I answer them, then welcome as always. But yeah, let's jump into the second part of the questions. Next up we have Ewok Jr. Hello, the winner of my 1,000 subscriber giveaway. Last year that was, wasn't it? In fact, coming up to 2 years ago now almost. And we're almost on 1,300 subs now, so keep going guys, we'll get there. 3 questions he asks. Which F1 race do you think has been underlooked? Mine is Hungary 2014, Spins incident, team orders and a solid battle for the lead. Hamilton's fight from the back in qualifying. That's a good race that at Ewok. I am struggling to disagree with that as a good race. Where would I go? Where would I go in terms of a good race? Yeah, I'm struggling with that one actually. I'm struggling to think of a race that I would think was underlooked. I think there's been one this year, if I remember rightly, where it wasn't the most exciting, but it was strategic. And I can't quite remember what that one was. That was a good question on the spot because I can't really think of any. But I would agree with Hungary 2014 for definite. That is a great shout actually for most underlooked. I think it's been appreciated in later life, but not so much back then, shall we say. Question 2. Have you ever visited America? And if not, where would you like to go? Or if you could plan a 3-week road trip, where would you go? I've been to America, but I've not been since I was 10. And I went to Florida, I went to Disneyland, did all the rides, did all the touristy kind of stuff. Really enjoyed myself, got to be honest. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Would I go back to America? No, I wouldn't though, unfortunately. I think there's too much gang-related crime, there's too much corruption, there's just too much hatred out there, I'm sorry. And, you know, the lovely Americans that watch this channel and the lovely people that I race with in the ARL are lovely, but it's my perspective of things now that in the US, it's absolutely fucked. And don't get me wrong, it is fucked here in the UK as well, but I've got no choice. I have to live here, you know. But in terms of America, I'm going to give it a wide berth. Maybe things will calm down, but I really don't think they will. To be honest with you, I sort of liken America to a bit of a war zone. I think you could look at someone the wrong way, you could get shot, you could get stabbed, you could get murdered by the police. So, yeah, that's the perspective I have on America, and I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go now. It's too dangerous for me personally. Not worth the risk. Not worth the risk. Question 3, 3rd and final question from Ewok Jr. He asks, what is your go-to Tesco meal deal? Mine is chicken triple, squares crisps, and a Pepsi Max cherry. Well, let's have a think. I always go for the hoisin duck wraps myself. I'm a hoisin duck wrap kind of guy. Followed up by beef Monster Munch crisp, because you cannot beat beef. Pickled onions a banger, but you cannot beat beef pickled monster, especially a big grab bag that you tend to get with a meal deal. Big massive bag of big beefy monster fingers. And then I either tend to go for a like a Lion Bar or a double decker as a chocolate, but if we're choosing drink, it would have to be a Dr. Pepper, because I love Dr. Pepper, and the only time I have a Dr. Pepper is when I get a meal deal. So we're going to go Dr. Pepper. Thank you for your 3 questions there, Ewok. Hope you're enjoying all your lovely gifts that you received in the 1,000 subscriber special, and all the best, buddy. Yeah, random Mariah questions, absolutely, mate, but that's what we love, isn't it? The randomness of it all. Thank you, Ewok, buddy, and yeah, keep well and keep in the comment section. It's always good to see you. Next up, C32 Scotland. Don't know why, but I was expecting a Q&A for some reason. Well, they are annual, buddy, and it has been just over a year since I did the last one. His first question is, what is your favourite Studio Liverpool era F1 game for the PlayStation 2? Well, that's easy. It's F105. That is the first F1 game I bought where I actually knew what it was. I had F1 games for the PS1, but I wasn't very good on them and things like that, and obviously it wasn't Studio Liverpool either, but F105, I remember picking it up from a local Tesco, and it was on offer, so I think it was getting ready for when F106 was coming out. I was just playing the likes of like Simpsons Hit and Run, The Getaway I absolutely loved. Far too young for that game, The Getaway, but I played it anyway. My Grand Theft Auto Vice City I played to death. And then I also had Toca Race Driver, the first one that had the last of the touring cars, the British touring cars on from the 2001 season. And then it was just a case of I came across F105, absolutely loved it. My first race I did, I was in the Red Bull as David Coulthard, and I remember that as a memory, which is crazy, isn't it? But yeah, I did Istanbul, I think it was. I think that was just an option in the quick race modes, actually, when I think about it. But yeah, I just absolutely loved it, adored it, great game, absolutely fantastic. I loved it, played it to death. So F105 for the special memories it holds. Question 2, what's the longest traffic jam you have ever been in? Well, I once went wrong and took a wrong turn. So back in the motorsport days, there used to be Renault Sport that was based in Wimbledon, right near the tennis courts, actually, in Wimbledon, which is obviously very near London. And as you know, London and Wimbledon don't like cars, and everything's a one-way system. So you go into Wimbledon to pick up and collect your parts, like you do. You pay for them. That's what I did. It was the road trip to go get that. And then you have to come out a different way. And going out the different way, there was road closures on. There was doing something on an A road that you inevitably drive back onto, but you couldn't get on at that certain junction that you needed to get back onto. So in all their mighty wisdom, there was two ways that you could get back on. And it just said follow diversion square or follow diversion diamond. They used two very, very similar. I mean, you think of a square and then think of a diamond. It's just a square tilted, isn't it? So you can imagine me then trying to look around London, try and follow a sat-nav that's just trying to take me onto a road that's closed. It was very stressful. And yeah, basically I took the wrong one and I went through for diamond instead of square, and I ended up in the middle of London. I drove over Tower Bridge in a clapped out Peugeot partner van on an R-Edge. So it was a 1997 van. It was very old for the time. It was about 2015 this happened. So yeah, I was in a clapped out Peugeot partner van driving over Tower Bridge. And yeah, all the tourists were taking pictures because it was a clapped out diesel van that was chugging along. And it took me 2.5 hours to do 4 miles. Yeah, so that was fun. So yeah, but I did drive through the central of London. 2.5 hours to do 4 miles is what that took. And never again. Never again. But yeah, all good fun. So yeah, that's the longest traffic jam I've technically been in, although it wasn't a traffic jam in terms of accidents. It was just stuck in the centre of London. Question 3. If myself, TB the Bear, Lance Stroll and Jolyon Palmer had a light and easy wine drinking competition, who would win and who would finish in the other places? Well, I think you would absolutely win, mate. Based on the video you did last year that was absolutely fantastic. Click on C32's channel and go watch that video if you haven't already. Very, very funny. He made a bet to himself, I don't know why, about how many points Stroll would score, and however many you'd score, he'd have to drink a certain amount of wine. He basically just got pissed on wine. So yeah, you would love a light and easy wine night, and you would win, buddy. Then it would have to be, I would say, Lance Stroll. I reckon he's an heavy drinker to take away the pain of his shit Formula 1 career and the fact his dad won't let him play tennis. Then it would be Jolyon Palmer, and then of course it would be TB the Bear because he's just a stuffed animal, isn't he, Dave? Stop playing with him. But yeah, those are good questions, those. Thanks, buddy. And yeah, good questions. Good random questions there. That's what we like. Then next up we have Dayne. How are you doing, buddy? Hope you're well. His first question is, would you put the likes of Esteban Gutierrez, Jolyon Palmer and Logan Sargent in a tier below the likes of Marcus Ericsson, Antonio Giovinazzi, Mick Schumacher and Sergei Sorokin when it comes to awfulness? I absolutely would. There is a place right at the bottom of the barrel for the likes of Marzispin, Palmer, Sargent and Gutierrez. Absolutely, absolutely. Ericsson was solid enough. Giovinazzi was solid enough but erratic. Mick Schumacher, again, solid on the day but more often than not erratic. Sergei Sorokin, didn't rate him, then highly rated him because I think he did a really good job in a shit car that year in 2018. So yeah, I would absolutely... There is a different tier. I'm not saying these drivers are absolutely incredible by any stretch, but there's a bottom of a barrel tier, and then there's the next tier above that, and that's where I would place the majority of those guys, actually. Second question, do you think if Hamilton had a very strong teammate like Alonso, Vettel or Button in 2008, who do you think wins the title? Very good question, actually. Kovalainen was not a title contender, was he? Despite the car being absolutely superb. So... yeah, that poses an interesting question. If Alonso had stayed, how would the dynamic at McLaren worked there? Would it have been even more animosity? Would it have been even more drama? And would that then mean that Massa won the title? Potentially, I would say. Because I don't think Alonso would have won the title over Hamilton. But I do think the ructions within the team would have continued. And it would have meant that Massa would have slipped in and would have got the victory, because they'd have been taking points out of each other as well as generally falling out. So yeah, I honestly do think it would have made a different title outcome. But I don't think, in all honesty, I think if you'd have put a strong teammate against Hamilton, I honestly don't think either McLaren would have won the title. I think it would have been Massa's. That is my genuine answer on that. So if I were to pick a strong teammate alongside Hamilton, would I think they would win the title over Hamilton? No, because I think Ferrari would have crept in and won another one. Is my honest answer to that one. So yeah, good question that, Anthony. Dayne, sorry. Good question that, Dayne. But yes, I think if Hamilton had a strong teammate in 2008, neither McLaren driver would have won the title, and it would have been Massa's. That's my answer. Thank you. Good question, Dayne. Next up, we have Chris. How are you doing, Chris? Good to see you, buddy. And he doesn't ask a question. He just puts, lol, every video you post is a Q&A. You literally answer every post on every video. Yeah, I do, to be fair. But we need some kind of structure, don't we? Come on, Chris. I'm all about structure and all that bollocks, aren't I? You know, we need an index. We need everything, yeah. So, yeah, cheers, Chris, for that. Shame you didn't ask any questions, bud. But I'm sure you'll ask them at any other point, to be fair. Next up, we come to Warwick Bull. How we doing, buddy? Sorry I haven't been on the channel in a few months. Don't mind at all, buddy. I know people's lives are busy. I just appreciate that you're here now. Asking 2 questions. His first one is, do you think modern TV shows are pure rubbish and not as good as they were 15 and 20 years ago and lack quality? I certainly do. There's not really many TV shows now that I actually watch. The last ones I was watching was Inside Number 9. That's finished now. Reece Shearsmith, Steve Pemberton. Fantastic series. Every episode's different if you've never seen it. You can watch Season 4, Episode 3 if you like. It doesn't matter. You can watch them. They're all individual 30-minute episodes with a twist at the end, which is fantastic. Some are funny, some are scary, some make you cry. Some do all of them all in one. Fantastic series, but that's finished now. But that was probably the last good TV show on TV. I can't really think of anything else because everything else is reality TV now, or very, very staged, or very just shit. It's all bollocks, isn't it? It's all full of Love Island. It's all full of bloody... I don't know if Only Ways Essex is still going, but that's what it's all about now. It's not about genuine funny comedies anymore on telly, or very, very rare anyway. We're getting some good documentaries out at the moment, though. There's some really good things like that, but TV these days, in terms of comedy and proper sitcoms, it's all died of death and is very, very poor quality. So yeah, I agree with that. Second question from Warwick is, do you think this electric car pushing nonsense will end soon, as a lot of manufacturers have been dropping or cutting back on their electric models? What's your honest thoughts on that? Good is my honest thoughts on that, Warwick. Electric vehicles are a load of bollocks, are a load of shit, they don't save the planet, and honestly, how much of an idiot do you have to be to think that mining cobalt and lithium and digging up all fucking areas of Africa and stuff and getting fucking child labour involved, and then you're building and producing most of the batteries in China, then getting them shipped over, or building most of the cars in China and then getting shipped over, and I just don't know where at any point do they think it makes sense that it's going to save the fucking planet. The emissions that they produce on just the sheer manufacture of the components to make an electric vehicle work and to actually put an electric vehicle together is going to far outweigh the benefits of when you've actually got one on the road. And it's stupid, because even if they say something like, oh, you know, after 10 years of owning your electric vehicle, then it'll offset its carbon emissions. Right, fantastic, that's brilliant. But what electric vehicle do you know that's still running around after 10 years? Because admittedly, back then, you had the Leaves and the Zoes, and that was about all you had in terms of electric. They're all dead now. They don't do it. And I'm not saying that the quality of electric vehicles and the ranges are better now, because they are, because that's how it works. But there's absolutely no way on God's earth are any of the cars that are out there now that are electric vehicles going to last 10 years or more, for the simple fact is no one's buying them outright. They're all on fucking lease deals. 3-year lease, then they'll go to auction, then they'll have a couple of years as, I don't know, whatever, a fleet car, and then they'll be scrapped. So no one buys cars anymore. So the fact that a car is ever going to reach 10 years is very, very rare, because you're going to get a new car every 3 to 5 years as an absolute maximum, because everyone just gets a lease deal, gets it on finance, gets it on tick, and you never own the vehicle outright. So there's no way that they're ever going to offset the carbon emissions, because they're never out there long enough to do it. And you're seeing it now where, as you say, the manufacturers are stopping production of their vehicles because they can't sell them, they can't shift them. They're having to do ridiculously cheap finance deals just to get them out the door. And these government targets that are set, they're having to say, no, I'm sorry, government, we can't do this because we can't get rid of them. The people don't want electric, and that is the main gist of it. People do not want to own, to purchase, to finance, to lease an electric vehicle, for the most part. You've got those that think they're brilliant and they think the sun shines out their arse. Then you've got those that think it serves their purpose, it serves what they need to do. Fine, no worries. But 99% of the population don't want them. And that's the general gist of it. I mean, you just have to look at the videos from China, where they're just producing electric vehicles and then just sticking them in fields. They're sticking a license plate on them, registering them, and then just popping them in a field, because it makes their targets look good. It meets the green targets that they've set themselves, even though they're not actually getting used. So they've produced all that, they've wasted all those carbon emissions, all those things, just to produce an electric vehicle that is then going to sit and rot in a field. Then when they catch fire, how the fuck do you put them out? They burn for days. It's just an absolute joke. We've got electric buses now in our area, right? And I was speaking to a bus driver because it genuinely interested me, right? And he rolled his eyes. He says, yeah, he says, we've had to have an additional 2 weeks of training to drive these electric buses that are here now. And we have had to get 23 buses to replace what 11 buses did. So basically the range isn't long enough, the range isn't strong enough, they're not going to last, so they have to have 23 buses to do what 11 did. 11 diesel buses, that is, of course. How does that make sense? So even if you had 11 buses replacing 11 buses, it would still be a bit weird, because you've taken 11 fully serviceable buses out of service for the main reason of getting an electric bus in. It's not like they've added new routes by putting the electric buses there. No. They've took 11 out to put 23 in to do the exact same amount of service. How does that make sense? The guy rolled his eyes, even he was like, yeah, it's joking it, mate. Like, yeah, it is. It's an absolute joke. That does not make sense. So yeah, that was the bus driver's words. We've got 23 electric buses to replace a route that only needed 11. Diesel combustion vehicles. Just doesn't make sense. So yeah, it's all a fucking farce, it's all false, it's all shit, it's all stupid, and the EV owners, I think, of this world are coming to an end, and I hope to God it comes to an end, and I hope the government realise how stupid they are, but I think the government know, and I think it's all about control. But there again, that's for another day. Then we come to Leewat. Hello Lee, how we doing, buddy? 2 questions for me, thank you very much. Why do you think Ocon has never raced for Mercedes in F1 despite being a Mercedes Junior? See, I was singing Ocon's praises back in the day, and I was a bit surprised that they went and got Bottas, weren't I, or maintained Bottas at Mercedes. But I think you look at it now, and I think his general attitude stank, to be honest with you, and I think that's the main bulk of it. We've seen his true colours shine through since I made that statement a few years ago on a cruel wall, I think it was. yeah, I was always saying, like, get Ocon. But it's the same reason they didn't get Pascal, isn't it? Pascal Wehrlein's attitude off track wasn't fantastic back in the day. And I think Ocon falls under that category, as we've seen this year and as we've seen in previous years as well. He falls out with every teammate, no matter who it is. It's always them that's the problem. It's never anyone else. And, yeah, he's never to blame. He's the golden child. And, yeah. You have to be selfish in the sport, but he's just a bit of an arrogant prat, isn't he? So yeah, I think that's the reason why he was never given the chance at Mercedes. I don't doubt his talent would have shone through had he had the chance when I thought he should have done, which was like 2019, 2020, for that Mercedes seat. But I think his attitude would have brought the team down, and that's the main reason why he didn't get it. I do think he is a solid driver. I think he's a solid peddler. I think he's always kept his teammates honest, with the likes of Alonso, with the likes of Gasly. But his attitude just stinks, and I think that's the main reason he didn't get the chance. Then his second question, Leewat asks, is should Sauber keep Bottas alongside Hülkenberg? God, I hope not. Even if it's just for 1 year, it's 1 year too many. Bottas does not deserve to be on the Formula 1 grid anymore. He is well past it. He is absolutely talentless. He's gone. He's washed up now. It's time for him to leave. Like Ricciardo, just go. Just go. He might be a great character. He might be a great guy. But he's even getting beaten by Zhou Guanyu in the last few races. That's not good. That's not good at all. So no, he doesn't deserve to stay. He deserves to, retire gracefully, get to the end of the season, admit it's the end, and just disappear from the grid. If he comes back in an ambassador role in Sauber, I think he might do really well for that. Especially if they get a young rookie in like Colapinto, he could really manage him well. But he certainly doesn't deserve to be behind the wheel of a Formula 1 car anymore. I would love to see Colapinto behind the wheel. I would like to see Paul Chair get a chance, although it's not looking realistic. I think Paul Chair's chasing the IndyCar dream now, and fair play to him for that. There's a couple of other drivers that are in the mix as well, weren't there? But I forget who they are now. I think one was Bortoleto, Gabriel Bortoleto. Maybe a bit more of a risk than Colapinto at the moment. But again, Bortoleto was having a fantastic F2 season. And Franco Colapinto was having a good season, but not as good as Bortoleto. So, yeah, to be honest, anyone other than Bottas would suit me down to the ground. I would love to see Colapinto in that car. However, as we stated earlier in the questions, if you didn't watch it, it might only be for a 1 year deal, and then he might find himself out of F1, so it might be better for him to not be there. But I would go with anyone other than Bottas, to be honest with you. Good questions, thank you, Lee. Greg, hello Greg, how are you, my friend? Welcome the newbies from the car festival. Hello, yes, hello everyone there. Let's have a look. Stay for the profanity and disqualifications. That's absolutely right, Greg. That's what it's all about on this channel. 2 questions. How do you see your pre-season picks coming along for Formula 1? I imagine that is, buddy. And not well at all, because I got Haas as dead last in the standings. I got Red Bull as absolutely dominating the championship once again. I don't think I'm going to get many right this year. I was fairly spot on last year with my constructors' predictions, but this year, Greg, I think it's going to go a bit south. I think we're going to be very, very wrong. But we'll see in come season's end, shall we? But yeah, I don't expect it to be as good as it was last year, let's put it that way. Question 2, biggest surprise, worst bitter disappointment so far this season. So biggest surprise this season for me, I would say, has to be probably how good Tsunoda's been. I think he's done a solid job. I think obviously we've got to say how good Franco Colapinto's been since he's come in for those few races. They've been really, really positive and proves that Williams has got the pace. I'm trying to think of who else has had a really good season this season, maybe shone through a little bit more. I don't think there really has been anyone that's shone through. Biggest surprise, of course, is that McLaren are fighting for the Constructors' title and fighting for the World Championship as well. Yeah. All right, then. But yeah, biggest surprises, I would say, is how well Colapinto has adapted to Formula 1 in his short time. Yeah, I think, there's been some drivers that have had some good seasons. But yeah, and then worst bitter disappointment so far this season. Worst bitter disappointment this season, I mean, it's got to be Sauber, hasn't it? They've not done fantastic at all. They've done really, really bad. I didn't expect them to be this bad, even with the bad, poor quality driver lineup. Yeah, I didn't expect them to be this bad. Bitter disappointment, I would say Alpine. Alpine have been a disappointment this season. I expected more from them with their driver lineup, but it's not come. The car's absolutely dog shit. It was overweight, it's sluggish, it's very snappy, it's very fidgety of a car. That's a disappointment. I would say Kevin Magnussen as well has been a bit of a disappointment for me as well, considering how good that Haas car has been on its day. I'm not saying it's a point scorer all the time, but for the most part it has been worthy of points. Hulkenberg been on the fringes so many times on points, but Kevin Magnussen has been the disappointment. I think if you'd have had a good solid second driver in that Haas car, they'd already be ahead of RB. And now that RB have got Lawson alongside Tsunoda, I think that's going to make that task that little bit harder for Haas to overcome RB. But we shall see. But yeah, biggest surprise has certainly been Colapinto's adaptation to Formula 1. Worst bitter disappointment has to be the Alpine squad, the Sauber squad, and of course I would say Kevin Magnussen as a driver, to be honest with you. Next up we have Leo Wilson. Hello. Do you follow WEC, the World Endurance Championship, WEC and IndyCar, or other motorsports such as much as Formula 1 or Formula E? So, no, I don't, to be honest with you, buddy. World Endurance I very rarely watch, I very rarely see. And IndyCar, if it's on Sky Sports F1, I will watch it if it's on. That's if I remember, but I don't watch a full season, to be honest. The only other championships I'm really interested in is the British Touring Car Championship and the TCR UK Championship. They're the other two forms of motorsport apart from Formula 1 and Formula E. I watch every other form of motorsport. I'm not saying I dislike it, I'm not saying I like it, but it's not something I watch religiously. Just if it's on, I'll watch it. Question 2. Has Jolyon Palmer been doing a good job as an F1 pundit or commentator after he failed as an F1 driver? To be honest, some things he comes out with are really good and I really enjoy what he says. I really enjoy the discussions and chats he has. I watched his Beyond the Grid from earlier this year and that was really interesting actually. So yeah, as a pundit, it's certainly a lot better than a driver, I would say that. Next up, we come to Matthew Briggs. Hello Matthew, hope you're well buddy. And he asks, what order would you rank these drivers in based on their entire career? We have Ricciardo, Perez, Bottas and Hulkenberg. That's difficult, that, isn't it? That is difficult because their entire career, but 3 of them have had a dip in form and Hulkenberg's never really dipped in form. So that's an interesting one. I would go, I mean, if... That is tough, isn't it? That is tough. That is really tough. Because 3 drivers have had chances at a top team and Hulkenberg's only really had a chance at Renault, which was a top team, and even then it wasn't a race-winning car, was it? So it's very difficult for Hulkenberg to be in there, to be honest. And then you think, well, he's never had a podium, and yet there has been chances to have a podium. I mean, Ricciardo was good when he was good, wasn't he? He was good when he was good. Yeah, that 2017 season was really good, just marred by reliability issues. 2016 was a good one. I'm going to say Ricciardo first. Ricciardo first because he was really strong in the races he did for Red Bull when he was there. He did really well at Renault, let's not forget that. He was really good at Renault. There was a point in that championship season in 2020 when he was leaving where he couldn't finish not off the podium. He was always on the podium, wasn't he, more often than not? He did a really good end to the season. Yeah, Ricciardo I think I will place first. Then you look at Perez, who was really strong in the Force India days. He was really good in 2012 in that Sauber. Had a dip in form with McLaren though, didn't he, in that one season, although McLaren weren't great then. Yes, secured podiums for Force India, then won the race, which was 2020 was a fantastic season for Perez, which got him the role at Red Bull in 2021, which he did respectable in. 22 was okay. It's been the last couple of years not been so great though. Bottas, solid at Williams, but maybe not getting the most out of the car. And then Mercedes was always the second driver and always was and never really did good. Was good on his day, but those days were once a season and weren't really good enough to ever string a championship protagonist challenge together. So I'm going to go with, maybe slightly controversial, but I'm going to go Ricciardo, Perez, Hulkenberg and then Bottas, because I think Bottas' career has always been a case of what if, buts and maybes. Hulkenberg has been strong despite never getting on the podium. He has had a strong career. revitalised his career, doing really well now. Bottas for me is probably the outlier there because he was good in the Williams, but there was more in that car, I feel, especially with that Mercedes engine in 2014 especially. Then you get to his Mercedes days, always second fiddle. Then you get to Sauber days, really strong half of 2022 because that was probably one of the best cars on the grid, only the car at weight, and then it tailed away and then he's never come back since. So that's the reason. Ricciardo, brilliant. Perez, really good. Hülkenberg, solid. Bottas, the nearly man on too many occasions. That's what I'm going for. Good questions, Matthew. And then his second question is, which are your 3 least favourite tracks on the current F1 calendar? Baku, without a doubt, hate that track. Abu Dhabi, it's better now, but I still don't like it. And Qatar. They're my 3 worst ones, I feel. But yeah, good questions. Thank you, Matty. Made me think that one. Then we come to Saiye, and he asks, who is the Formula 1 GOAT? For me, it has to be Michael Schumacher. Always will be. I grew up watching him. He was the one that I watched standing on the podium every day, standing on the top spot every day, just, you know, winning the championships. And it was great to witness. It was great for me as a kid to watch someone break records. And I think we're really lucky that we've been able to see, especially someone my age, break the records once and then Hamilton goes and does it again, because normally it's 20, 30 years apart before you see someone go and break the records, but now it's happened within like a decade and a half, you know. So yeah, really, really good. But for me, Michael Schumacher is always going to be the GOAT of Formula 1 for me, and I think that's based on the era that I grew up in. No statistics, no stats, nothing like that. It's just purely for the fact that I grew up in that era of Formula 1 and absolutely love seeing Michael Schumacher win. So yeah, he is my personal GOAT. Second question, which driver or team in any series has given you the most joy and why? Well, team for me, of course, is Force India. I adored Force India from the moment they came into the sport in 2008 to the moment they left halfway through the 2018 season. Yeah, Force India, I absolutely love rooting for the underdog, and Force India were that underdog team that did good. They did a really good job. They were the last of the minnow teams on minimal budgets that really got the maximum out of the car. It's why I like Haas now, because they've probably got the least budget again compared to everyone else on the grid. And you know, they really do wonders with the budget that they've got to do as well as they do, and that was like Force India. The amount of you know, people that they had compared to the others was ridiculously small, but they made sure that they got the maximum out of everyone, out of every department, and they did really good. The podiums that they had were phenomenal. It was really enjoyable time for me, and that was my favourite time in Formula 1 because I'd found a team that I liked to support and really get involved with them. I've got all the models, and you know, I've got everything that's possible for Force India, to be honest with you, when it comes to the models and things. And yeah, I was sad when they went, and I was even more sadder that fucking Lawrence Stroll bought them. But yeah, that's it. I'm so glad the team survived, of course, for the staff and personnel there. But yeah, a part of me died when Force India died, and I've never had that affection for teams again. I love Haas, and I do really watch what they do, and I try and make sure I understand what strategies they're on and things, and I do get involved more than I do the other teams. But as much as I do love Haas, and I do love the drivers, I've never got as fully involved as what I have when I loved Force India, is what I would say. But very good question, that. And if I had to pick a driver in any series that's given me most joy, I would say watching Ash Sutton in the British Touring Car Championship. He's been fantastic. He's been a formidable force. A really, really good character. I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of years back at Thruxton when we did a weekend with my mates, as we used to do. We've missed out this year, unfortunately, but I'm sure next year we'll do it again. And yeah, I had a great chat with him. He had pictures with his car outside that we just taking it back from the weighbridge. Just a real nice, down-to-earth character, real nice guy, and he went and won the championship that year as well. So yeah, that was nice to witness and see. And yeah, great guy. As are all the British touring car drivers. I must stress that all the British touring car drivers are really approachable, really friendly. That goes for the TCR UK as well. Throwing an odd curveball in here for drivers that give me the most joy. Rick Kerry, if anyone remembers watching the touring cars back in the day, he used to have a diesel-powered BMW 1 Series, but he's in the TCR UK Championship this year, and they've got a category called the Gen 1 Cup, which is the older TCR cars that aren't quite as fast as the more modern cars, but it runs on a cheaper budget basically. It's cheaper to buy the older cars. And he's been running in the Gen 1 Cup this year. There's not been much competition because unfortunately the Gen 1 Cup's been very hit and miss with the amount of drivers that they've had on the grid, but he has had one title protagonist for that Gen 1 Cup Championship, which has been Will Beach. And they have shared wins aplenty, podiums aplenty in that category, and I've been really rooting for Rick Kerry. I got to chat to him at Silverstone on the grid, which was really nice, and it's such a really friendly bloke, and I really hope he wins the Gen 1 Cup, and that's happening this weekend. So I think he's only got a 12-point margin over Will Beach, which isn't much at all because it's 7 points difference for a win, I think. So there's 3 rounds. It could go either way, but I hope it goes Rick's way. So that's the teams and drivers that brought me the most joy. Good question, that. Thank you, Saiye. And his third question: what motorsport events are you most looking forward to? Well, we've just had the British Touring Car finale last weekend. That was phenomenal. Great way to end the season. Sadly, my drivers didn't win the title. It was Jake Hill that won it. No disrespect against Jake, of course, but I just love Tom Ingram and Ash Sutton that little bit more. Ash Sutton went in as an outsider, though, this time around. It's just a shame to see it all come undone in turn 1 on the first lap. Just a shame. And of course TCR this weekend. I am looking forward to the end of the Formula 1 season, mainly to see how close Lando Norris does actually get to Max, but I'm still tipping Max will win the title. Good question, Saiye. Thank you very much. Then we come to Dave, F1 Games PlayStation. How are we doing, Dave? Hope you're well. Is F1 really that bad now, or did we just have rose-tinted glasses on remembering the 90s? I do think it's that bad now, Dave, to be honest with you, because we have enjoyed seasons within Formula 1. Like, I've enjoyed 2021. What a stunning season that was. And I always said to everyone, appreciate it while we've got it, because it's not going to last forever. And instead, people decided they're going to fall out amongst each other and not really appreciate what we witnessed. I get the ending was shit. But yeah, I honestly do think that the era of Formula 1 now, for me personally, is gone because the love of it, it's just too much money involved, it's too commercialised, there's too many races, and there's no minnow teams like I just mentioned in the previous question. You do have a Haas team running on a smaller budget, but we're still talking hundreds of millions. We're not talking that Minardi team anymore, we're not talking Jordan. And yeah, you could look back and say that is nostalgia in a way, because you've not got teams running on a small budget and things like that. But I used to love it when an underdog had their day, and there's not really that underdog within Formula 1 anymore. You know, you've got teams running on lesser budgets, etc., but there's still not an underdog. There's still hundreds of millions pumped into every team that's out there, and it's just become far too much money, far too commercialised, and it's just all got a bit silly. And again, you've had the introduction of the sprint races, which I don't like. We've got them coming up as well, haven't we, to the end of the season. So yeah, we'll see, Dave. But yeah, for me, I think the era for me which was best was the mid-2000s. And again, it probably is because of nostalgia, but Formula 1 just doesn't live up to those days for me personally. And I do enjoy looking back at the 90s as well, really do, because there's some fantastic races, some fantastic drivers, and yeah, it's just... Yeah, I think nostalgia does play a part, but I think now Formula 1 is just too overhyped. Question 2. Will F1 still be around in 30 years once fossil fuels are finally banned? Absolutely, Dave. F1 will be still around. There was the touring cars this year, actually, the last couple of rounds. Darrell de Leon in the Ultimate Seat Cupra was running synthetic fuels. And he ran with some success in it. So that was the first car to run on fully synthetic fuels. It was part of a trial. They were happy to take part in the trial because they weren't fighting for anything. And they did actually really well in those 2 races. So maybe it gave them a power advantage. Who knows? But yeah, they're not going to go electric, I don't think. I don't think they're going to merge with Formula E now like I first suspected they would, because I think the whole electric thing's going to die out. But I certainly think they're going to go down the route of synthetic fuels. How you produce synthetic fuels, and I'm sure there'll be emissions pumped out there, but we don't need to worry about that. That's over there. We don't need to worry. But yeah, I think it'll still be going, even after fossil fuels are banned or no longer available, etc. And then he asks, will Codemasters make F1 2030? I'm probably sure they will. Probably sure they will, Dave, to be honest with you. But will we buy it? Probably not. And then last but by no means least, what do you make of the British Touring Car Champion of 2024? This is from Brad Viper Racing, of course. Hiya, Brad. Well, Jake Hill deserved it, didn't he, at the end of the day? I think it's a shame that the weather played a part and the Ingram's car setup wasn't quite right for him. It was a shame because had it been dry, I think Ingram would have been the champion. That is my honest thoughts. I think a lot of pressure was on Jake. You could see he had a difficult start off the line, even in a rear-wheel drive car, and Ingram had the advantage. I think had it been dry, that would have been Ingram's championship there from that moment, won. But unfortunately, it didn't go his way, but there's always next season, isn't there? And then his second question is, sticking to BTCC, if you were to make a BTCC video game, what would you include and why? Ooh, good question, Brad. I'd make sure that it was just as realistic as possible, but still trying to keep the fun element of touring cars into it. So, you know, you got your biff in your barge in. I would make sure that there was punctures in there because that's realistic to... you know, to touring cars, especially around the likes of Thruxton, which is hard wearing on circuits. I'd make it, you know, tyre specific. I'd bring the tyre rules in for the soft, medium, hard compound at the rounds that they were brought in the championship. I would make sure that it was encapsulated as accurately as possible. You have to pit for damage because there's bodywork that's trailing, or, you know, you've got an unsafe car. I would also make it that you come into the pits, you get your damage fixed, then you go out, but then your car starts overheating, so you have to pull into the pits and retire. I would just try and make it as an authentic as possible, is what I would say. Great question, Brad. Really enjoyed that one. That was a good one. And that is it. That is it, everyone. We have come to the end of the Q&A, so I now need to decide if I'm going to split it into part 1 or 2 parts or whatever. But I will let you all know in the comment section down below, of course, for your respective part, and then we'll upload it accordingly. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. Thank you to everyone that asked questions. We've been here, sat for quite a while again. I think we're almost at 2 hours, but not quite as long as last year. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for everyone that's commented. I hope I answered all your questions. I hope I answered them all in a way that you felt was valid. And yeah, we'll do the same again next year, shall we? Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and as always, much love.